Hi, I'm Peter Elliott. I'm one of the principal analysts in the planning group at DELP. In this video, I'll be talking about the change in the zoning of industrial land. Land is zoned from a non-industrial use, such as a farm zone, to an industrial zone to enable it to be used for industrial purposes, such as warehouses, factories, storage yards, amongst other things. The opposite also occurs, where industrial land is rezoned to provide land for another economic use, or residential development. These changes occur to differing degrees across metropolitan Melbourne. Here is a map of all the industrial zonings that have occurred across metropolitan Melbourne between 2000, 2001 and 2016, 2017. The additions to industrial land are represented by the purple bubbles, and the rezonings from industrial, or deletions, are the blue ones. Over the last 16 years, some 6,300 hectares of land has been zoned for industrial purposes across metropolitan Melbourne. On the other side of the ledger, 2,200 hectares was zoned from industrial. So, subtracting the additions from the deletions, there has been a net increase of 4,100 hectares of land zoned for industrial purposes across metropolitan Melbourne. We'll make the picture a bit clearer by looking at just the additions to industrial land. There are a couple of things to notice here. First is that compared to the deletions from industrial land, there are much fewer of them. The second thing is they tend to be much larger. This is due to a long history and consistency of strategic land use planning for industrial development. This strategic approach is reflected in the location of industrial land zonings, where most of the additions are located within one of the state's significant industrial precincts. This map is just of the deletions from industrial land. Here we can see that there are many more rezonings, and they tend to be relatively small. Around 80% of rezonings from industrial land are smaller than 5 hectares. Much of the rezoning of industrial land to another use occurs in the inner and middle areas of Melbourne. Here I've zoomed in so we can see these zonings in more detail. You'll also see that I've changed the scale to make the small rezonings more visible. But even at this scale, they still appear fairly small. We can also explore what type of zone the industrial land has been zoned to. The Urban Development Program aggregates these zones into 7 categories. They are residential, mixed use, commercial, transport, conservation, open space and recreation, various public use zones, and a small number of zones that have been classified as other. We'll be looking at more detail at the residential, mixed use, commercial and transport rezonings, as these categories cover nearly 90% of the rezoning since 2000 and 2001. The dark bubbles are where industrial land has been rezoned to a residential zone. This type of rezoning has made up approximately a third of industrial land rezonings between 2000, 2001 and 2016, 2017. They vary in size from quite small to relatively large sites. Some of the larger rezonings include part of the Kodak plant in Newlands, the former Orica Research Labs in Ascot Vale, the Brad Mill Textiles plant in Spotswood, and 2 large former industrial sites in Sunshine and Deer Park. The conversion of industrial land to mixed-use zone makes up about 18% of industrial land rezonings across metropolitan Melbourne. Of all the deletions from industrial land, the Fisherman's Bend Urban Renewal Project, at 215 hectares, is the largest single rezoning from industrial land in metropolitan Melbourne. Rezoning of land to a commercial use makes up about 19% of the deletions from industrial land. For the most part, the rezonings to a commercial use reflects the current commercial nature of the land. For example, the area along High Street and Plenty Road in Thornbury and Preston, the Homemaker Centre in High Point, the rezoning of former industrial land to an activity centre zone in Sunshine and Coburg. Industrial land is also rezoned to transport uses. These types of rezonings are made to reflect the use of the land, such as a road or a railway. An example of this is the land associated with the Craigieburn Bypass, or the Deer Park Bypass. To get a copy of the Urban Development Program report and associated data, please go to www.planning.vic.gov.au or search for the Urban Development Program report. Thanks for watching.